Welcome back, travelers, to Chapter 11 of Django Wexler's The Gathering Storm. Now, we already just had the Guild Summit fill fantastically with the death of Hesperia, and everyone is freaking out trying to figure out what's going on. And now after everything has kind of dispersed and is freaking out, we have basically everybody trying to reconvene, regather. And this entire chapter is really well focused on Ralzarek, and kind of goes back and forth between where he first planeswalked and how he's trying to deal with what's going on right now. So it opens up with Ral basically running non-stop, because obviously everything is, Bolas is getting closer, there's no time for them to rest, none of that stuff is going to help them. And he has that plan that involves the maze. So all this is happening, there's explosions everywhere, there's scientists working together, but it's the most focused the Mizzet has ever been. And it's really cool because it notes that the fact that usually they're going in all sorts of directions, but instead they're all focused on one end goal. And because they're all geniuses, basically, they're able to do insane mathematical equations and figure stuff out that they normally wouldn't be able to do as quickly. In the matter of days, they have basically solved the maze. Another cool part is that you see a lot of oh my gosh, explosions kind of part of the red aspects of the guild. And the more blue aspect is just that I'm smart. But there's a lot more blue to the guild than is normally given. In certain cards, you'll see hydromancers, and those obviously are part of that guild. They're the ones that put out the fires, basically the firefighters. And then of course there were the healers that you see that they're working on some kind of new contraption that should be able to heal. But when it comes down to these to this particular moment, it actually says the bureaucratic infighting, the hierarchy of the guild. There's a hierarchy to it, and people are constantly trying to one-up each other. And it's cool that because it's blue and red, which are allies, they kind of divot towards the ambition aspect of black without actually being black. They have that ambition because of the chaos and the order. They wanted the chaos and the more logical sides of things. They logically want to be more powerful, to be able to make bigger explosions. And I love all the things that are part of it. It's very cool. It's very well made. And so basically, all this is happening. Ralzarek's super tired, and he keeps drifting in and out of sleep. So Ral's first encounter, basically, after planeswalking, is with muggers, naturally. And they want to take his clothes because he looks funny, because he's dressed weird, and he's got golden stuff on him. So they're like, yeah, just give us all that stuff and we'll just stab you a few times and we'll just go. And he's like, no, I don't think so, because it happens to be raining. For Ralzarek, I feel like the main reason he planeswalked to whatever plane this was because there was a thunderstorm going on, and that attracted him. So he winds up here, and he's able to calm the thunderstorm and just zap all the guys and take all their stuff instead, and he's able to go on his merry way. But it's cool because he gets to this apprentice shop, and the guy's like, yeah, well, why would I want you? You're just, you're a bit old to be an apprentice. And then Ralzarek's like, watch this, and goes, and his electricity just goes everywhere throughout the clockwork shop the guy's got, and he's like, cool, you're hired, you'll be super useful, you can charge all my batteries. We get another flash forward. Ral, of course, is basically in his little cubicle, and he's going insane over all these papers, and Hakara comes in, and she's like, hi, you want to have some fun? And he's like, no, I don't want to have fun right now. I want to get this figured out. I don't need fun right now. And she's like, I have an idea, we can play hide and seek. And it's this nice little real quick segue. She's like, I once played hide and seek with somebody, they were really good at it. I didn't find them for 3 weeks, and then they apparently were under the floorboards, and I didn't really realize they were there until I smelled them. It's like, oh cool, so they died. That makes sense, they're Rakdos. Everybody dies in Rakdos. Sometimes they die twice. So Ral, in the past, he winds up with this guy named Harith, who already, if you sound like you're throwing up when you say Harith, then you probably shouldn't trust the guy. That's just my general rule of life. If the guy's named Harith, then maybe don't go with that. But he winds up with him instead of, because he basically the opposite of Elias. He's this big guy, he got coarse hands and stuff like that. He's a kind of guy, and he's also a thug. And he's like, hey, Ral, I have a plan. We're gonna go ahead and rob your master. And they're and Ral's like, so that's why you wanted to be with me, was simply so that you could get to all the gold and such that the guy's got. And he's like, well, yeah. And he's super serious. And so Ral's like, okay, sure. And he goes, what? He goes, because that guy has nothing left to teach me. We get a really cool look at Ral at this point, where he's, I guess what you consider a chaotic neutral individual. He just wants to get done what he needs to get done, and he wants to learn as much as he can from the people around him. Once he's learned all he can, burn it, electrocute it, get it out of the way. And that really shows like Ral Zarek's mindset at the time. It's a very red-blue way of like showing ambition, I guess the best way to put it. You learn as much as you can. Once you're done with it, throw it away. If it has no use to you, you don't need it. It's the looting aspect of red-blue. And so Ral Zarek is doing that with Harith here, and that basically what winds up happening is they rob the guy, and eventually Ral even robs Harith and says, well, you got nothing left for me to learn anyway, so why am I still here? And it's really interesting to show like a much darker side of Ral Zarek, a much more sinister, much more selfish side of him that is still red-blue. It's at its core is still red-blue, but he shows a lot of negative aspects of that color, and I really like that. Back in the present of this book, obviously, since we already know what happens in the future, back in the present, Ral Zarek is basically on his way to go talk to Niv Mizzet. And he's like, okay, let's do this. It's time to give him his update on what's going on. And so he goes up there, and Niv Mizzet's like, what you got for me? He's like, basically nothing. And he's like, that's not good. And he goes, okay, but I got an idea. And he goes, okay, what's the idea? Remember the Dragon's Maze? He goes, yes. He goes, it's called the Dragon's Maze because of me. He goes, oh yeah. Well, anyways, and he lays out a map, and he goes, there's all these ley lines and all these nodes that connect and weave together across the plane. They kind of bind the Guild Pact. And Niv Mizzet's like, okay, yeah, I know that. So what? He goes, and you can't change the Guild Pact without all 10 guilds' permission. That's part of the rules, right? And he's like, yeah, I know that too. I'm going to kill you if you don't say something that I don't know already. And he goes, okay, so here's the thing. Instead of trying to change the Guild Pact to amend it, we can circumvent it. We can go around it. We can do something on the outside of the Guild Pact to affect the Guild Pact. And Niv Mizzet's like, okay, now you have my attention. This sounds really dumb, but if it can work, it'll work great. And so Niv Mizzet is sitting there listening to Ral Zarek. And Ral tells him, all they need to do is get control of 2 areas. The reason they need to control those 2 areas is because those are very important spots, ley line wise, like just diagram wise, that would, if they were to connect them with everything else they have control over, they would be able to create a new amendment to the Guild Pact from the outside that would allow Niv Mizzet to become the Guild Master, not the Guild Master, the Guild Pact. After the assassination attempt, you have the 3 of the white guilds, the Orzhov, the Azorius, and Boros, joining back up with the initial Grixis guilds that are still together. What's cool is that these white guilds have black, red, and blue, so they still kind of fit that paradigm, and they kind of fit together. And that actually, because it's now 6 guilds working together, you only have 4 that aren't, and they're all the green guilds, which I found really cool. I don't really know the significance of that. Maybe it's just the fact that changing the Guild Pact in general is a very unnatural thing to do, since the Guild Pact itself, while it's self-imposed, like while artificial, has been woven into the nature of the city itself. And so I guess the green guilds would be the least likely to want to change the status quo. But it's really cool because they talk about it, like, well, the Simic might eventually join us. You might eventually get the Selesnians, but when it comes to Golgari, we had Vraska actively assassinating a Sphinx that was going to be helping us, so we know we can't trust her. And then the Gruul are anarchists, and we just had them try to work with us, and we failed, so the likelihood of them being okay with us in their territory is really bad. So the Gruul and the Golgari are the 2 strike points, and they're going to strike them at the same time. They're basically going to start a guild war. There's going to be 6 guilds against those 2 guilds, and then the other 2 might fall in one direction or the other. But the fact that all this is happening is crazy, because you don't really hear about it in the War of the Spark. This is like a huge historical event. Something has to happen. Something has to give before everything settles down to where it was in War of the Spark. Now, what's interesting is that we know Selesnians basically sequester themselves, and so does Simic. The 2 of them wind up being like basically locked away. So that's probably a result of what happens here, of the Golgari and the Gruul getting super messed up. This might even be like the moment Domri Raid becomes the new Guildmaster. maybe something happens and Borbergus is just like, I guess we lost this war and I'm no longer a fit leader. And Dominator's like, you're right, you aren't. You know, because it's Dominator. Now, obviously, we know Dovin not a good guy. And we know Dovin has control of the Azorius now. But he's here at this meeting. And he's like working with them and he's like, yes, it's all good. It's very good, very good. But it's super, super, super interesting because you know that he's a spy. You know that he has the specific ability to see the flaws in literally everything. So what else would he be doing here other than basically looking at their plan and being like, that's wrong, that's bad, that's a bad idea, that's also a bad idea. All these ideas are really bad. I'll be able to manipulate that and make good use of that. And it's really cool because you have Raul Zarek and he's trusting this guy. He already had a hard enough time trusting Vraska and she betrayed him. And then even near the end of this chapter, Raul comments that the old Raul had decided he wasn't going to trust anyone ever again. But that after meeting Tomek and even Hakara, all these people, he feels like he can open up again. And that kind of helps to explain why in War of the Spark he's a very different character than he was in the original like Gate Crash era, was because he's just a different person. He's had a life-changing experience that has allowed him to tap into his emotional side more so than his cold logical side after so much time. And it's really cool. It's really, really interesting. And I'm super excited to see how Tobin Bond exactly is going to ruin everything that's going on, because basically my idea is that Borborygmus is going to fail as a leader, and that most likely Dominator will be given specific information that allow them to foil the plan. That's what would make sense to me. That would explain why Dominator is able to do what he does, is because he's given the idea by Bolas basically to do something that is a fatal flaw in the plan that the good guys got. So I guess we might see that in the next chapter. Until then, travel well.